on in the world since Saturday especially. I'd like to start with just a few seconds of silence in remembrance of anyone who has been impacted by the horrific attacks and war going on now. So if we could just take a little moment of silence before we get started, that'd be great. So yes, there's a lot going on, but the good news is that we're going to be able to take our focus away from that just for an hour here, and we're going to talk about something that we have so much excitement and enthusiasm about, and that's the abortion petition. We have an army of people wanting to go ahead and sign petitions, and it's confusing. So we're as to where we are and when we think we can do that. So first of all, before we get into that, I want to just do a couple of announcements here. First of all, the legislature voted to not have primary elections. And so I know the Republicans are doing caucuses, but the Democrats are going to have their own election. There's going to be two ways to vote, either in person at polling places that will be at least one in each county and multiple ones in St. Louis and Kansas City. And the draft plan would allow them to cast both ballots between 8 and noon on the day of the primary. They're also going to do a mail reach out, and the party plans to distribute mail-in ballots starting on February 12th, and they need to be received by March 12th. So what we want to do is, if you tune into us, you're going to be hearing a lot about this. I know this is a little early, but I at least wanted to give you a heads up on what we're going to be doing about the primary and the caucus this year. So we'll have regular updates at our meetings, and I'm sure if, on the different mailing lists that you're on, that you will be receiving them too. So next, we are going to have our holiday party at Bar Louie in Chesterfield at our normal Tuesday, December 12th meetings. So you'll have announcements about that. It would be nice to sign up only because we'll know how big of a table to reserve, but generally we get 20 people maybe, so we'll have tables and have a few drinks and so on for that. Always we have a Clarkson Road cleanup. We're going to do it on November 4th. And I know it doesn't sound like fun, but it really is fun, and you get a mile of exercise. We clean everything up, and what takes an hour out of your time in the morning. They'll start at 10 on November 4th. We'll be reaching out to you to sign up for that, or if you want to let us know at the front table, or raise your hand now, because we want to be able to coordinate and make sure we got enough people. Generally, hopefully we will. So the best announcement I'm saving for the last. We have a real chance, Democrats have a real chance to be able to get a seat at the table in the Missouri Senate to have the Republicans negotiate with us on anything that's going to pass. And our member, she's a Chesterfield Township member, Mary Neal, keeps on top of everything going on, and she picks projects that she gets excited to work on. And so what she's going to do is explain what this is and tell you about it. And we've got some flyers here if you'd like to take one home, and we'll be talking more about it as the season goes on. But come on over, Mary.
Thank you. Maureen and I were at the first fender of the newly reinvigorated Missouri Senate PAC, and it was so inspiring. I am so excited. We can really break the supermajority in the Senate. It is absolutely possible, and it's just, I'm over the top. I'm just so thrilled.
I was too.
Yeah,
I was very excited.
We've been on texting all day about it. But it's exciting because it's a power shift, but it's great personally. I was telling Ben Centuri about it, and he responded with one word: hope. It's hope.
It's hope.
Because if we can change the power balance in the Senate, where else can we go? It's a good start. So how are we going to do it? Here they are, 5 of them, 5 core competitive districts. Why we need to break the supermajority, in the long term, when we get a Democratic governor back, they won't be able to stop everything she or he does. Go Crystal. So in the long term, it's really important for building up to change Missouri as a whole. But they have power now. As Maureen alluded to, there are major pieces of legislation that could not have passed this past session without Democrats, because the Republicans are a mess, and they don't always get all their members to vote for things. So the budget, the Missouri budget, had to have Democrats to pass. And there are others too. I'm going to make a list because I'm not a Senate expert, but the budget for sure. And the more Democrats we get in, the more power we'll have with this mess on the other side. So here are the 5. One you all know about, I'm sure, Joe Peerless. Well, let me backtrack a minute. There are 34 Senate seats. 2/3 is required for a supermajority. We've got 10 seats now that are Democrat. We need to net 2 more, and we'll break the supermajority, and we can do that. There are 3 of these seats that are Democratic now that we need to hold. Doug Beck is up for re-election, and then there are 2 more that will be open that we have fantastic candidates for, and then we need to flip 2. And Joe Peerless is one of the 2 that we can flip. So Doug Beck, he's the assistant minority leader in South County. He's got, I'm sorry, we don't have more brochures. They didn't think it was going to take off this fast, so they didn't print it. It's helpful to have a visual with all this detail, but they didn't print enough, and you know it's union, and we couldn't, but anyway. And we don't have slides yet, but we'll get them. So Doug Beck in South County, he's been in tough races before. It's been held by a Republican. He's got more Republicans from redistricting, but he can do it. He's done it before. He'll do it again. The other 2 to hold are in Kansas City. Maggie Nurenbaum is running in Lauren Arthur's seat. Lauren termed out. Maggie's a firecracker. Jill Shoup had a fundraiser for her a couple weeks ago. She's awesome. She's I swear, didn't they say 4th generation? Did I get that right?
I can't remember.
4th generation labor. I'm like, what? She's a teacher, a mother of small kids. She's awesome. She had one Republican opponent, and he dropped out, which sounds good because there are no major candidates working against her, and hopefully it's because she's a shoe-in, but we'll see. It's competitive, but she can do it. And then the other one in Kansas City is Robbie Sauls. He's a state rep now. Maggie's a state rep now, too. I didn't even know who he was, and I asked Joe Adams. He says, well, yeah, I see him every day. He's my housemate in Jeff City. So he's housemates with Jeff and Doug. It's a tight group. They really work really well together. Robbie is an Air Force reservist. He's a JAG lawyer. He's a labor lawyer. He's been a prosecutor. He's really strong. He typically outperforms other Democrats on the ballot, up and down the ballot. He's got a really tough district. They threw a bunch of Republicans in there. But he's a fighter, and he's done it before, and it's possible. It's really possible. And the 2 flippers are Stephen Weber in Boone County, who a lot of you know. He was the state chair in McCaskill's last race. He's awesome. He's just the right age. He's young and experienced, you know. No, he's perfect. But he's a veteran. He was in the State House. He's currently policy director for the Missouri AFL-CIO, and he's got better numbers than Doug Beck. Doug's like, no, he can't have better numbers.
But he does.
A lot of Democrats were put into that district, so he's a very likely winner. And then last but certainly not least is Joe Peerless, who's right out here. Probably a lot of you already know him and are working with him. He's a recently retired vice president from Drury Hotels Business Development. He's been a volunteer at the American Red Cross for 37 years. It's like, who does that? But he's great, and he's got great people on his team. Jill Shoup is really working hard for him. So it's going to be hard, but it's really possible. And then on the back, we have the PAC, the Missouri Senate Democrats. Are you going to send around the email of the brochure?
Well, I thought people can take some here, but we'll include all of this in our newsletter, our next month's newsletter. And you're going to hear from us often about it.
Right. All this information is on the Senate Dems website. Missouri Senate Dems, MOSENDEMS. All the candidate information in the pack.
I'll
And
just pass
as you
this
all
around.
know, the current thing you can do
I'll just pass this
is
around.
fundraising. That's the main activity now. And just spread the word. I think this is incredibly exciting. We can really make a difference. It's really possible. So spread the word, and if you can, support Joe. And I'm supporting all 5 of them, but that's just me. But definitely Joe, and if you can support the PAC, that's awesome. And let everybody know about it, because it's really exciting, and we can do it.
Yep, we can. See, I told you that we saved the best announcement for last. All exciting. So now we'll get to the reason everybody's wanting to come here tonight. We have Ellen Alper, who I personally know. She's Chief Executive Officer at National Council of Jewish Women, St. Louis, up on Lindbergh, where the resale shop is. They have their corporate offices there. She's led the organization since 2004. She manages membership, advocacy, community service, the store, education, and everything is under her umbrella. She's grown the staff from when she took over from 4 to 11 full-time people. There's 5,000 members now. She brings over 35 years of public service, nonprofit management to the table. And she also does consulting and board development and strategic planning. She's really an excellent, excellent person. And I want to give a shout out to National Council of Jewish Women. I had no idea they existed till a friend of mine invited me to an event where Robbie Kaplan was speaker, that's a person who fought for the equal gay rights to marry in the Supreme Court. And I met these women, and it was right after Trump. I mean, how did we all feel when Trump was elected? I met these women, and I said, oh my God, they're just like me. I can't believe how progressive they are, how the values that they carry are exactly my values, and I joined that night. So I want to give you a shout out, besides bringing your good things to the resale shop. Don't go in, because you will leave with things. I've done that. I want to give a shout out that they have wonderful volunteer opportunities, like the back to school store and the holiday giving that they do. You'll be very happy with this organization. So I had to get on my soapbox for them. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to have Ellen come up and tell us what's going on with the petition and how someday we'll be hopefully able to help.
Someday. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Maureen. So I'll just give you kind of 2 more minutes about National Council of Jewish Women. We've been around in the St. Louis region for 128 years. We say it all the time. We may be the National Council of Jewish Women, but you don't have to be a woman and you don't have to be Jewish in order to get involved. You just have to believe in the issues that we believe in. And so we get involved in a lot of issues, things that tend to be a little more on the progressive side. That's as far as I'll go politically. We are a 501c3, so we endorse issues. We do not endorse candidates, okay, as an organization. As individuals we do, but as an organization we do not. As Maureen said, I've been there 18 years, and we've seen a lot of growth in the work that we do, but in the largest area of growth we've seen is advocacy. Unfortunately, Missouri has gone, as you all know, and I grew up here, from what I would call a purple state to a very much red state, which means organizations like ours and yours are called upon to do a lot more in the community. There's a lot more work to do, and it's an uphill battle. But we've seen some victories as an organization over the past 10 or 15 years. Under 2 Republican administrations, we've had 4 bills signed into law that dealt with victims of domestic violence, dealt with human trafficking, and issues like that we get involved in. We are very much a women's rights, reproductive justice organization. We do our work in a very different way than a lot of charities. We do our work through what's called a social justice and empowerment model. And what that means is our work is done in a way that engages the people that we are working with. Gone are the days of, all right, let's go in, we're going to hand out a bunch of stuff, and we're all going to leave, right? It's a very transactional kind of relationship. What we want is a transformational relationship. What we want is to be able to give people a hand up, not a hand out. And in order to do that, if we're going to do direct service and we're going to help kids get ready for school, and we're going to give them backpacks and clothes and shoes and winter coats and, I mean, everything from toothbrushes and period products, believe it or not, then we need to ask the question, why do their families need those things, right? Why are families not making a living wage? Why do they not have health insurance? Why is childcare so expensive? Why is there no transportation if you live in the city and your job's in the county? How are you going to get there if you don't own a car, right? Are you going to take 2 hours worth of buses and metro? And so what are the challenges out there that impact people's lives, and how can we work on policies to better those lives? So our mission is, it's very broad. It's to improve the lives of women, children, and families, and to fight for individual and civil rights. And we do it under Jewish value, the Jewish value of Tikkun Olam, which means to repair the world. We are not a religious organization in any way, shape, or form, but it's all about giving back to the community in which we live. And I do want to call out Maureen for acknowledging the atrocities that happened in Israel on Saturday. We are getting more and more ugly news out of that region of the world. And for those of you that are interested in showing support to either Israel or to your Jewish friends, family, people that you may know, there's a lot of folks that travel to Israel that aren't Jewish that are stuck over there right now. There is a solidarity rally tomorrow night at 5:30 at the JCC, which is at Lindbergh and Schutz in Creve Coeur in the gymnasium. There will be a tremendous amount of security at the event. Unfortunately, we have to have it in today's world. As they said on the Zoom call I was on this morning, visible security and invisible security. But it is open to the community, and if you're interested in showing your support or have friends that might be going and you might be interested in going with them, that is taking place tomorrow night from 5:30 to 6:30. It is literally, it will be, I promise you, 1 hour. I was on a planning meeting for it this morning. It is not a political event, okay? It is a time to come together in faith to show our support because there's really not a whole lot else we can do right now. So that is what is going to happen at that event. There are not going to be any elected officials that are speaking. It is all about the people who are being impacted by what's happening and being able to share their stories and coming together to support them. So if you are interested in that, it is tomorrow night at 5:30. I've got my email up on the screen at some point here. Feel free to take it down. I'm happy to give you my cell phone or my business card before I go if you need more information about any of the things that we do. So with that said, Maureen asked me to come talk about abortion access in Missouri and what's happening. And where are we with the initiative petition process and the Americans United lawsuit. So I don't know if you're all aware that there are two parallel things happening right now in Missouri, in addition to the fact that a Republican operative, I guess is the best way to describe her, has also submitted 6 initiative petitions on abortion. So we have 11 that were submitted by the original coalition. We have 6 new ones that were submitted after that. And then we have a lawsuit that involves 14 clergy from 7 different faiths, I believe, who are taking it down a different tack based on some of the things that have happened in the Missouri legislature. So I'm going to do kind of 2 halves to this presentation. The first will be on the initiative petition process and where we are, and the second half will be on the Americans United lawsuit that we are engaged in with the National Women's Law Center. And feel free, hold your questions, or if there's something that's pertinent to what I'm talking about, feel free to raise your hand, and I'm happy to take questions as we go.
I just realized
Okay.
I took that with me.
Oh, okay. I think I'm loud enough. You can hear me in the back? Okay. So, what's new? We have an initiative petition process that started back in March, and I'm going to walk through the timeline. And what that process does is allows the people to bring issues to the ballot in the state of Missouri. All right? Then we have the clergy lawsuit, which is challenging HB 126, which is the law that was passed that was invoked by our wonderful state elected leaders within 30 seconds of Roe v. Wade falling, that outlawed abortion in the state of Missouri, except under the extreme health of the mother, if that is in danger. That is the only exception to the law in Missouri at the present time. Okay? So, how do we get abortion on the ballot? So here's what happened. In 6 states where abortion access was put on the ballot, it passed in every single one of them when it was put to a vote of the people. All right? So what do we know? We know that we can do that in Missouri. If they can do it in Kansas, for God's sake, we can do it in Missouri, right? Think about that, right? Okay? So what happened? March of 2023, an individual retired doctor filed 11 petitions of language. And what that means is she filed language in 11 different ways to put abortion on the ballot. And it's very common to do that because what happens is you file 11 and you want one to rise to the top. You want the one that's going to poll the best when you do your messaging and your polling, but you also want the one that has the best chance of surviving. And because in Missouri it's a kind of bizarre process, the Secretary of State has the right to write the language. And by law in the state of Missouri, the Secretary of State is supposed to write unbiased language. Well, we know that doesn't happen here, right? So here's what happened. So the state's done everything they can to block it. So when those petitions were filed in March, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, technically the Secretary of State had 54 days to respond with language. That included getting the fiscal note from the state auditor, but as you know, the Attorney General and the Secretary of State challenged the fiscal note as well, because they did everything they could in their power to block the process from moving forward in a timeline that would allow us to get the signatures we need to put it on the ballot. So they filed against the auditor on the fiscal note. They created language that violates Missouri state law, and they continue to appeal to delay the process in the state of Missouri. They want to do everything they can do to delay the process so we don't have time to get the signatures we need to get it on the ballot. So, according to the law, language cannot be deceptive or misleading to voters. We got a ruling last week from Judge Beadham in Cole County, I think it's Cole County, that the Secretary of State's language did violate the law. The judge wrote his own language, which, if you've read it, it's actually really good language, okay? Secretary of State has already appealed. Here's what's interesting, is you have a certain amount of time on an appeal. And if you're trying to drag the process out, right, and this is my own personal opinion, I'm not an attorney. If you're trying to drag the process out, what do? You wait until the last minute to appeal, right? What did our Secretary of State do? Because we already know who he is and what he does. He appealed the day the language came out. He shortened his own timeline instead of stretching it out, which was actually a benefit to us in terms of our ability to respond, okay? So, with that said, so March 11th, that's when the clock started ticking, technically. So May 1st, we were supposed to get the summary language. Well, clearly that didn't happen, right? In August, we finally got language after delays, after losing twice in the court, and we only knew what was coming because a Freedom of Information Act request was filed to get the language before the Secretary of State made it public, okay? So we're now in August, it's now October, we're still in court, right? Because the Secretary of State has now appealed the judge's language, and now it started a new time clock in terms of when they have to respond and how that's going to move forward. So our goal as a coalition, and this is a very informal coalition. There is no formal coalition right now. There are just a group of organizations that are supporting the process, okay? The goal is, and I'm not sure why, there's something funky in there. We're hoping to have final language by November 1st. That would allow us then to be able to print up petitions and get out there and start collecting signatures. The reason why this challenge was so horrific for the signature collection process is, where do you collect the majority of your signatures? You collect them at street fairs, you collect them at festivals, you collect them at big community events. When do all those events take place? In the summertime, right. So what happens? We now have to look at different avenues. We may have signature gathering parties. We may have one of the things they did in Ohio to get it on the ballot, because I talked to my counterpart there, they actually had drive-through signature collection sites where you could go to a location, drive through, not even get out of your car. They handed you your thing, you signed it, they filled it out, and you drove off. They made it really easy to collect signatures. But here's the deal. We need 185,000 ballot signatures. You need 8% out of 6 of the 8 congressional districts in Missouri, okay? And we need to have them by May 7th of 2024. They need to be submitted in the state. Now, in order to do that and to make sure they are valid signatures, you have to collect somewhere between 275 and 330,000 signatures. That's a lot of signatures, okay? And here's why you have to do that. How many of you have registered to vote recently? Well, good for you. You're going to be one ahead of everybody else. How many of you remembered how you filled out your voter registration card when you originally registered to vote? Did you sign it with a middle initial? Did it get signed with a maiden name, a married name, a hyphenated name, or some other way? Well, if your signature that's on record with the state of Missouri doesn't match how you sign it on the petition, it's not valid. Okay? I strongly encourage all of you to go to vote411.org, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and verify your voter registration. So before you sign any petition on anything, make sure what you're signing matches what's on your voter registration information in the state of Missouri, or they will invalidate your signature. Make sure it's up to date. Make sure it's your correct address, okay? If you've moved and not updated your voter registration information, again, they'll invalidate your signature, okay?
What's the website again?
At vote411.org. And you can log into the Secretary of State's website and do the same thing in the state of Missouri. Vote411.org, it'll show you whatever's going to be on your ballot upcoming. It's going to show you a lot more information. You kind of have to go down to the bottom to get to it. But we got to collect a whole lot of signatures, and they got to be valid signatures. And we're going to need a lot of volunteers to do that. The organizations in this region of the state are going to focus on the 2nd Congressional District. Why? Because that has tended to vote in the opposite direction the last couple of elections. So we know we have to work a little harder to get the number of signatures we need to get in the 2nd Congressional District, which I believe is where we are right now. Okay? So, and we will work in the 1st Congressional District. You know, people are starting to talk about a plan about what it's going to look like statewide. We don't really have any details on that yet because we don't have language yet. We have nothing to put on a petition yet. But we know that once we get it on the ballot, our polls are telling us we can do this, okay? The polls in Missouri are telling us that the majority of Missourians favor access to abortion with some limitations. And this is really disheartening because there's a lot of folks in the community, it's kind of an all or nothing. Like if we can't have unlimited, unfettered access to abortion, we don't want anything. And then there are other folks in the community who have basically said, well, if we can get a 16-week, we'll take it because it's better than nothing, right? And so the entire reproductive justice movement is not necessarily on the same page with this, which is part of what makes it so difficult. Additionally, the 6 proposals that were then filed by this other operative that they're waiting on, they haven't gotten their language yet, and they haven't gotten their fiscal note yet either, to my knowledge. They were supposed to get it last Monday, and I don't think it came out. Their language has some additional things in there besides 12 and 14 and 16-week stuff. They have language in there about parental consent, about exceptions for rape and incest, but if you're going to require parental consent and it's a situation of incest, how are you going to get that, right? And, you know, and we know that the majority of rapes are not supported in a domestic violence situation. They're not reported. And so how do you and they're calling for them to be verified as reported in order to allow you to move forward. And how are they going to do that? Now, they're saying they've got some pretty loose language in there to allow that to move forward, but it remains to be seen. So Unfortunately, right now, the community that supports this is split a little bit in different places, depending upon what they think is going to go through. And once we get language, we still have to take it out to polling and see if we've got language from 6. And I think of the 11 petitions, they've narrowed it down to 6 in the lawsuits. They're going to have to do polling on all 6 to see which one is the best one that they should move forward to put on the ballot. So that's how the process works. Once we get the signatures and they get validated, right, then it can be put on the ballot. The goal was to get it on the ballot at November 2024. Why? Because the state of Missouri and our elected officials are trying to change the process, okay? They want to say, well, instead of 50%, you need 70% or 60%. Or they want to change all the time frames. They want to take away the ability of the public, of the citizens of Missouri, to be able to put things on the ballot. Why do they want to do that? Because the last 3 things that the citizens of Missouri have put on the ballot have all passed. Why? Because the citizens know what they want, even if our elected officials don't vote that way. Okay? So they're worried about it. However, we saw just recently in, I want to say Ohio, where they voted that down. I think it was Ohio. One of the states just voted it down, where the legislature tried to raise the threshold for the number of signatures and the percentage to pass, and the voters saw right through it and voted it down. Okay? We think Missouri voters are smart enough to see what's happening if the legislature tries it. I've heard through the grapevine that they may not even try to do that because they know it's a losing proposition and they don't want to be on the side of a losing proposition. Who knows, right? Any questions about that part before I move to the second half? Yes, ma'am.
Microphone, hold on just 1 second.
Yeah.
We got a microphone because you can't hear it on.
Earlier you said that the judge gave some sample ballot language?
No, he rewrote the ballot language that is to be used, and that's what the Secretary of State appealed.
But how do you know which of the 6 they're going to be, if he doesn't know which of the 6?
Well, he's written language for all of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and then we get to decide, once we have language, which one can move forward. Yeah.
Okay, my question is as far as, you know, like on the marijuana bills, we started out with medical marijuana and then we went to recreational. Is it a similar process, do you think, or philosophy for the abortion rights, that maybe we try to initially get stuff with, you know, more loose restrictions on it and then go for the whole ball of wax where we have, you know, no restrictions?
You know, that's kind of where the community is a little bit split. There are those folks that believe they'd rather have something than nothing, okay? And then there are those that said, no, Roe v. Wade didn't go far enough. We want all or nothing, or we're not going to support it. And so I can't really give you an answer on that. There are folks on both sides of that in terms of the, you know, which way it should go.
So is it anticipated that we might have a mixture of language, you know, or is that unknown? And I guess if we did have a mixture as far as ballot proposals, how would that be?
It would be really confusing and difficult and very hard to educate the voters. You know, I met with the woman that introduced the other 6 proposals. And I said to her, so what happens if you get enough signatures and the other group gets enough signatures, and now we have 2 issues on the ballot and they don't say the same thing? And her response to me was, I hope it doesn't come to that. Well, that doesn't help me, right? There's a good possibility that could happen, but I don't know. And then it's really going to take a lot of voter education. Otherwise, they both fail. And then it's a missed opportunity all the way around for all of us. And that's the challenge, you know.
I think you said something about you have to have so many districts pass.
No, you have to have signatures from each district. You have to have 8% of registered voters in 6 of the 8 congressional districts.
And the problem is going to be rural areas, probably.
Yep. Yes, that is going to be a problem, and that is where most likely, if things move forward, they will probably be raising a whole lot of money to hire people to go into those areas to collect signatures. Because they're not as dense, it's much harder to get signatures. And even when you're in an area like ours, they say that the average number of valid signatures you get is 8 signatures an hour. You know, how many of you are going to stand outside Deerberg's, you know, for 3 hours or 4 hours, or even if Deerberg's would let you do that, right? To do that. I mean, it's hard work collecting the signatures. It's really hard work. Yeah.
You said that voters would be confused if there's more than one proposal that's on the ballot, but isn't it so that if there, let's say there are 2 different proposals that had enough signatures, they get on the ballot, and one of them has a 15-week, one of them has unlimited, whatever, isn't it the one that gets the most votes?
Oh, yeah.
That actually gets passed?
Yeah, but what happens if they both pass and they're conflicting?
Well,
I mean, I don't know the answer. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a constitutional law attorney.
isn't it the most votes though?
Yeah. No, they could both pass.
If they both pass,
They could both pass to change the Missouri Constitution. Yeah. That's what's bizarre. Yeah. And I will tell you, I could be wrong on that. That's what I was told. Okay. But I'm just going on what's been shared with me by the powers that be that are doing a lot of this work. Yeah.
Is there really no legal remedy for the way they've slowed down the process? It's so transparent that they're not doing the Secretary of State is not doing his job. There's no legal remedy and all that.
No, because we can't back up the clock to give us 6 more months to get signatures. We've already run the time clock for when we wanted to be out there collecting signatures, unfortunately. The only legal remedy is to vote somebody out of office if they don't do what they're supposed to do as an elected official.
What he's done.
You know,
Yeah.
but there really isn't. You know, I would imagine the folks that are moving this forward could potentially look at it and say, well, maybe we need to push it off to 2026, right? I don't know.
Yeah, that's my other question is when is it really too late?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I've heard that if we don't have language by November 1st, that there's going to be a real strong reevaluation of whether or not they can move it forward. Now, they want to say Ohio or one of the states, they got all their signatures in 90 days.
Wow.
So I don't know if they needed the same amount that we need here in Missouri. So it depends how motivated all of us are to go out and get all those signatures that we need, right? It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's winter time. Yeah.
So is there national funding to help Missouri?
There is national money that is interested in investing in Missouri should this move forward. I don't know the organizations, but I have heard that there is. It costs between $20 and $40 million to go through this process. It's very expensive. And it's expensive to hire people and to get them out there and, you know, to do what you need to do if that's the way we have to go about it.
Would you wait for the microphone because Facebook Live, they won't be able to hear your questions. So we got 2 of them. We'll run one over to you. Questions? We don't have any more questions.
Okay, I'm going to move to the second half. But I do want to just preface again, I am not an attorney, okay? I'm not giving you a legal opinion on any of this. Some of this is my personal opinion, and some of this has been shared with me by the powers that be that are working on this process. So, with that said, the other thing that is happening parallel to the initiative petition process is a lawsuit that was filed by 14 clergy in Missouri. It is being put together by Americans United for Separation of Church and State and the National Women's Law Center. Arnold and Porter is the law firm that's working on it. Denise Lieberman, who runs the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition here in Missouri, is the lead Missouri attorney, because you have to have an attorney that's licensed in the state of Missouri to take this in front of the judge. We actually went down when the initial petitions were filed and sat in the courtroom and watched as they did it. There were 4 attorneys from the Attorney General's office, and then there were 2 folks from Americans United, 2 folks from National Women's Law Center, and Denise, and it was really fascinating just to watch the process. So, when was this done? January 2023, the lawsuit was filed, and basically What they are challenging in this lawsuit is the separation of church and state that is stronger in the Missouri Constitution than in the federal Constitution, believe it or not. The language in Missouri is stronger. And what you'll see as I walk through here is, for whatever reason, our elected officials in the state of Missouri decided to enshrine what they call religious language in the law, which is what allowed them to file this lawsuit, okay? So that's Reverend Tracy Blackman that is speaking. This guy's from the Episcopal Church. She's a congregation. I think she's the United Church of Christ. That's Jewish Community Relations Council. So there's a broad range of religious groups and clergy that are in this lawsuit, okay? So Missouri Constitution has 3 separate articles that prohibit the establishment of or preference for any particular faith. It's called the Establishment Clause, okay? And as I said, these are more protective than in the federal Constitution, believe it or not. It's in there 3 times. 3 times. So what did they do? Why do we have a case? So the preamble, that should have said House Bill 126. That's a typo on my part. Sorry about that. It is the intention of the General Assembly of the State of Missouri to regulate abortion in recognition that Almighty God is the author of life. We should be happy that they put that in there, because that is what we are going to argue in court, right? That the minute that you reference Almighty God is the author of life, that you've now brought something into the law that shouldn't be there according to the Missouri Constitution. Okay? So, this is Senator Jamila Nishi during debate. And here's what she said. People can practice their religions as they see fit, but don't come legislating your own religious beliefs onto other people. That's not right. That is the basis of where this lawsuit is coming from. Okay? That you can't, and I will tell you, if you go and you Google it or you look at some of the quotes that some of our folks have said on the floor of the House, it's pretty unbelievable. And the Senate, the things that they've said referencing their God, their church, all kinds of religious references, and they made it very public that that's why they were doing what they were doing, which you can't do in Missouri.
That's why this is important.
That's exactly why. You're 100% correct. So, we're currently in court. The judge has ruled. So the first thing we had to do was go to court and prove that as clergy, they had standing to take the case to court, that they were harmed in some way, or the constituencies that they represent were harmed in some way. This is the day that we announced the lawsuit. We were down at the big church downtown, right near the courthouse, because we marched from the church to the courthouse. And that's Denise on the bottom right, some of the other clergy that are involved. They've been there as part of the lawsuit. These clergy are from all across the state of Missouri, okay? And so, so now we wait. We're in the process of waiting. It's in the courts, and now it just has to go through the process. So, more information. AU.org is Americans United. There's a whole piece on the Missouri abortion lawsuit. They have really done some remarkable stuff on their website about the lawsuit and some of the celebrities that they've gotten to speak up on behalf of what's happening here in Missouri. National Women's Law Center, there's a whole piece on messaging and how to talk about it. Abortion Action Missouri is the former NARAL, then Pro-Choice Missouri. They've just rebranded as Abortion Action Missouri. They've got a whole piece on there. And then NCJW nationally as well as locally has a piece on reproductive health care access and equity. Now, we don't know where we're going to go yet in terms of signature gathering because we don't have language, okay? And until we have language, and until, like in our organization, for example, once we get language, it then has to go to our board, and our board has to vote to endorse the language before we can go out and collect signatures as an organization. And so there are a lot of other nonprofits that are going to go through that same process before they take a position on whatever is going to go on the ballot, okay? I am happy, though, if you want to email me, call me, I'll give you my business cards. If you are interested in being part of the process, I will make sure you get on that list so that as soon as we know that process is moving forward, we can let you know, or I'll just let Maureen know and she'll let all of you know, how to sign up, because you have to be trained to go out and collect signatures, okay? Because the state is very specific about it. And what happens in a lot of these is the organizations that are running it hire a company that does what's called signature validation, right? So they don't want you to fill in your congressional district, your state rep district, your state senate district. They just want you to sign the petition that's either St. Louis City or St. Louis County. Why? Because they're going to validate your address and they're going to fill the rest of that in. But you're going to sign it based on your address, okay? And that way they know they're validating things correctly. Because if you think you live in the 1st Congressional District and you accidentally live in the 2nd and you write the wrong one down, it invalidates your signature, okay? So apparently I didn't know this. There's professional companies and that's all they do is validate signatures for petition gathering around the country. So what I've been told is if we move forward, or I should be more optimistic, when we move forward, that will be part of the process that happens, okay? But feel free to email me or call me. I'll give you my card. It's got my cell phone on it as well. Also has a coupon on the back for a resale shop. If you're a resale shopper and you like to do that, I would invite you to pop over. But and I'm happy to take any other questions about this part or anything we said earlier. I know Maureen said we had kind of a
8:30.
8:30, so we got plenty of time to do Q&A.
I just want to give another shout out. You guys are so organized. I love working with you. If I'm going to sit collect
Thanks, Mary.
signatures, I'm going.
Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering, when this lawsuit is heard in court, how that might impact the petition that we're trying.
Well, the lawsuit, if it moves forward in our favor, could invalidate Missouri law. And it could potentially take away the need for the ballot initiative, right? However, the lawsuit won't, from what I understand, it may invalidate HB 126, which is what was signed into law. It doesn't mean they're not going to appeal it, right? It doesn't mean it could go all the way to the Supreme Court. Well, we know what's going to happen if it does that, unless there's some significant changes in the near future.
I thought the state law has,
I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. But, anybody can appeal anything. And I think it would go to the Missouri Supreme Court first anyway. Well, maybe. I got to think about this, about which court it's in. Is anybody out there an attorney? None of you guys are attorneys? Oh, I'll have to find out an answer and get back to you. I really don't know. I don't know the process in terms of that piece of it. Yeah.
Maybe a stupid question, but I'll ask it anyway. The Republicans vote as a bloc in the state of Missouri.
Pardon?
Are the Republicans on this issue voting as a bloc, or is there anybody standing up and voting for abortion rights?
Well, no, the woman that filed the other 6 petitions leads a kind of Republicans for Choice group. Okay? That's where she's coming from, and she's looking at it from a very different perspective in terms of developing language that she thinks more conservative voters will support.